Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 15 must-start and must-sit running backs for the 2022 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Today's video is being sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook. We're going to be talking about them a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 15 must-start and must-sit running backs. We begin with the must-start running backs at number 1 with Zonovan Bam Knight of the New York Jumbo Jets going up against the Detroit Lions this week at home in MetLife. Last week up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, Zonovan Knight was the RB number 13 in half PPR, tied with Marlon Mack, having 17 rushes for 71 yards, as well as a touchdown in that game with 2 receptions on 2 targets for 6 yards. He has had 3 straight games with over 11 half PPR points, and in both of his last 2 games, he has had over 14 half PPR points, and in every single game his carries have increased from the one prior to it. In week number 14, with the return of Michael Carter, Zonovan Knight saw 47% of the snaps and Michael Carter had 50% of the snaps. And even though Michael Carter played more snaps, it is very clear that if you're comparing both running backs, that Zonovan Knight is miles above the skill set of a player like Michael Carter, and I strongly believe that Zonovan Knight is going to be the lead back going forward for this team. My only worry about this take about Zonovan Knight is the health of Magic Mike White. If Mike White is not able to go in this matchup up against the Detroit Lions, their number 2 quarterback is no longer Joe Flacco. It is Zach Wilson. And again, I understand that, this is an easy matchup for the Lions, and even if Zach Wilson has to play, he should play good. Well, how sure are we of that? Because Zach Wilson hasn't been good all year long. So if Mike White plays, I love Zonovan Knight. Again, the Lions ranked 22nd in rush DVOA. But if Zach Wilson's under center, I'm still willing to play Zonovan Knight, but he definitely would not be a must-start running back for me on the week. Next up, we move to Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Houston Texans in Houston this week. Last week, up against the Denver Broncos in Denver, Pacheco was the RB number 19 in half PPR, having 13 rushes for 70 yards and 3 receptions on 3 targets for 23 yards, and he has had 4 straight games with over 10 half PPR points. Last week was his worst game by far over his last 3 weeks, but that is mainly because we saw Jerick McKinnon absolutely blow the back out of the Denver Broncos in that game. Jerick McKinnon took over in a game that I don't really think anyone thought Jerick McKinnon was a complete and utter fucking smash in that spot, and I am honestly not too worried about McKinnon stealing away a bunch of touches from Pacheco going forward. To me, it really does still feel like Pacheco is the number 1 running back on this team, and this is an incredibly favorable matchup because the Texans defense is absolute dookie up against the run. They rank 27th against the run via DVOA, and I know that the Dallas Cowboys versus Houston Texans was incredibly close last week, but we did end up seeing Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott be relatively effective up against that run defense. Tony Pollard was super effective in that game. I really think Isaiah Pacheco should have a bounce back game here. And again, he didn't really shit the bed last week or anything. He just didn't live up to my expectations. Next up, we move to Brian Robinson, the final must-start running back before we pivot into the must-sits of the Washington Commanders going up against the New York Football Giants at home in Washington. The Commanders were on bye in week number 14, so we got to hop in the time machine and look back towards week number 13 for his stats. In week number 13, he actually went up against the New York Football Giants, but that time it was at MetLife, RB number 17 in half PPR, 21 rushes for 96 yards, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 15 yards, though he did have a fumble in that game. Across his last 2 games in week 13 and week number 12, he has had back-to-back solid games. We have seen a dip in production as well of the other running back on the team, Antonio Gibson, as we have seen Robinson's snap counts go up and up and up, and they've gotten closer to Antonio Gibson. Gibson's kind of fallen off the edge of the earth a little bit. Week 13 snap counts, Antonio Gibson 49%, Brian Robinson 47%, and while Brian Robinson isn't going to see 5-6 targets a game like Antonio Gibson probably could, Brian Robinson makes up for that by getting a bunch of carries game in and game out. The Giants actually rank 31st up against the run. There's only one team worse than them in the NFL up against the run via DVOA. So I fully expect this could be a fucking Hulk smash spot for Brian Robinson here up against the New York Football Giants. But before we pivot on into the must-sit running backs, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our sponsor, over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, if you're a brand new user, the DraftKings Sportsbook, you can click on the link in the video description or the pinned comment down below. You will receive a great offer. If you bet $5 on any sport pregame money line from now until December 30th, you will receive $150 in free bets as long as your team wins. Note how I said as long as your team wins. So I'm throwing it on the screen right now. You're looking at DraftKings Sportsbook. In my opinion, you should navigate to the top left, click on college basketball because college basketball has the largest favorites. And tonight you are going to take Auburn minus 2,500 versus Georgia State. If you like a different team, that's a big favorite. You can go ahead and pick them as well. But for me, tonight, Auburn minus 2,500 versus Georgia State. They have a very good shot of winning. Also important to note that if you live in Maryland, you will actually receive $200 in free bets as long as your bet wins. So again, bet $5 on any sport pregame money line from now until December 30th, and you will receive $150 in free bets if your team wins. And if you live in Maryland, you'll actually get $200 in free bets. So back on into things. Now we pivot to the must-sit running backs, beginning with Cordero Patterson of the Atlanta Falcons going up against the New Orleans Saints. Now, I know you might be thinking Nick Patterson hasn't really produced as of recently. And yes, I agree on that. But I feel as though some people are going to talk themselves into Cordero Patterson because of the quarterback switch from Marcus Mariota to Desmond Ridder. And while I really hope this change boosts this offense up, I hope it could take Patterson to the next level. I like Cordero Patterson. I hope that it helps out Drizzy Drake London. But I honestly think playing Patterson the first week with a rookie quarterback under center, I know they're coming out of bye. I still do think that is an absolutely fucking crazy thing to do, to play Patterson in this spot, especially with the fact that Arthur Smith has shown us over the last few weeks that this is a clear running back by committee. This is a clear 3-4 headed in some games backfield. It is very, very annoying for fantasy football. Week 13 versus the Steelers, 11 rushes for 60 yards. Sure, he had a decent game, but that's not good at all for fantasy. You need targets, and when we liked Patterson so much last year, it's because he's getting the targets, getting the receptions. Not doing that recently, and it's been a huge damper on his fantasy football production. I hope Desmond Ridder fixes that, but I don't really trust it with his first game starting in the NFL. Next up, we got James Cook of the Buffalo Bills going up against the Miami Dolphins. Week 14 versus the New York Jumbo Jets. A huge kind of crash for James Cook. It seemed like, we're looking in the right direction for James Cook. He's going to smash this week. He's going against the Jets. I know they're a little bit tough against the run, but hey, it seems like they're going to want to run the ball. It seems like the team is pushing towards James Cook being a value piece in this offense, a heavily valued player they're going to look to rely on, and that just was not the case. RB 51.5 PPR last week, 4 rushes for 6 yards, 1 reception on 1 target for 9 yards. The running back snap counts for the Buffalo Bills last week, Devin Singletary 49%. James Cook, 41%. Naheem Hines, 17%. And the Dolphins rank 8th in rush DVOA. The Dolphins are incredibly tough against the run. I know this game might be a bit snowy, and they're going to look to run the ball, but I don't trust James Cook at all. And I even talked about this last week a bunch, how while everyone's picking up James Cook, and while I hope James Cook is that guy, will they actually pivot to him, or is this just going to be a gross running back by committee? The answer seems to be, at least for what we saw last week, that this really is a running back by committee. Final running back to discuss here, Samaje Perine of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. RB 22.5 PPR last week up against the Cleveland Browns at home in Cincinnati. 4 rushes for 22 yards and a touchdown, 1 reception on 5 targets for 2 yards. I think, just like with Cordero Patterson, I think there's going to be a decent amount of people that try to do the mental gymnastics into talking themselves into starting Perine because of how he played last week and because Mixon didn't really play all that well. But honestly, Mixon was coming back off of an injury, And I think this game, while it's not like the Buccaneers defense is soft as baby shit, right? They rank 12th against the run DVOA. I think we see a bunch more Mixon this week, and that's going to heavily dilute Samaje Perine. It's not like Samaje Perine playing as good as he did earned him like a 50-50 split with Joe Mixon. Like, I really just don't see that going forward. I think that would be a little bit crazy to assume. So Samaje Perine's going back to the bench. I know he had a decent game last week. I just don't see it up against the Bucs this week. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. If you have any questions about week number 15, ask down below in the comment section. And make sure you check out our sponsor of today's video, DraftKings Sportsbook. It is also important to note that if you guys are new to DFS, or you've been playing DFS for a while and you've never checked out our stochastic package, make sure you do. It's linked down in the description. You get 3 days free of NFL by just clicking on the link in the video description. It has our projections, ownership projections. It has our boom bust tool. It has all of the tools that I have used to win money playing DFS. It helps out a ton. I don't think I would have been able to make as much money as I've made playing DFS without the tools. So make sure you guys do check those out. Again, they're free for 3 days as long as you're a new user to Stochastic. Click on the link in the video description. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good